Welcome to BizTech Forward, your go-to podcast for cutting-edge insights at the intersection of business and technology. Let's move forward together.
Hi there, welcome back to our special recap of BizTech Forward Season 2. I'm Anni, your host, and what a great season we've had. And let's have a look at the highlights. We kicked off with Mike Peterson, advisory CTO, mentor, and coach, talking about how client expectations have changed completely. Mike shared real stories about what clients miss from the old days and told us what they really want in 2025. Let's hear from that conversation.
I think that data, we are in the era of data, even if they want to call it AI. I mean, the foundation of AI is data. It was probably 10 to 15 years ago when we started to move into big data and really get into data science and really get into machine learning, that data became more imperative and more important. And the more data you had and the ability to process it. So along the way, the infrastructures got better, right? Compute power went from CPUs to GPUs. And so instead of doing really fast and using Moore's law to get more serial processing done, you went to GPUs and you were getting parallel processing done. So the amount of things that you could do, and this has been the great push, and you see this with things like, NVIDIA being so popular. I mean, those chips were originally for gaming. So in gaming, you had to be able to process in parallel. And somebody figured out, there's other things that we can do related to data and crunching numbers and doing the type of analytics that we want to do. So that infrastructure, we moved out of data centers and into the cloud. So cloud storage allowed you to have a lot more data. You started thinking, not in kilobytes or, megabytes. You would start thinking in terabytes and petabytes. You had so much data at your ready and what you could do. And, all the techniques that came for cleansing that data and organizing it and be able to access it. So we are in the age of data. Now that's just the underpinning for why we can do large language models, and why we can do the type of, AI that we're doing and what we're going to do. And God help us if they figured out how to do quantum computing when you'll be able to do, 1 billion calculations at once. So the other thing that data has spawned is a whole new realm of cybersecurity, both on the protection side and the attack side. And so we have to be able to do that of laws around the world. Everybody has a privacy law. In China, they got PIPL, we got GDPR, and US. I mean, even California has a variation of the privacy law that's different than the rest of the US. India has for years threatened to put something out, but I think they waited for the last election and that'll restart. And so when you have these sovereign data rules and privacy, you have to think differently about how you architect things and how you have local data and, what you have to do to be able to process in there. And that's process, the data as well as manage the data. And so we are dead in the center of the data revolution. And we're neither at the beginning or the end, but this is only going to, with the technology that's coming underneath, it's only going to become more. And then you wrap around that, the desire for privacy and the desire for sovereign countries to have their own sovereign clouds, their sovereign rules. And you have to be able to, figure that. I mean, China has the Great Firewall. The amount of impediments that puts in outside people and gives an advantage to internal companies. I mean, you see this with, lawsuits against Google and search and stuff from the EU. It is all about data.
Maryna Melnik, head of learning and development at DataArt, discussed creating a culture of continuous learning across thousands of people. She talked about training junior talent and how clients and companies can learn together for better results. Here is a clip from that chat.
It may sound overwhelming, especially in a company as large and globally distributed as DataArt. But the thing is, no one really starts organizing learning when they're already that big. It all starts much earlier. From my experience, from what I've observed, is that employees naturally self-organize themselves when it comes to learning. In smaller companies where there isn't a formal L&D function, for instance, people take learning into their hands usually. They form communities, and they're with professional communities of interest, and they're where they share their knowledge. They conduct webinars and then store them somewhere in SharePoint, for instance, for others to use. They mentor each other on projects, and they do many other things. And so such informal initiatives usually become the foundation for a bigger learning culture when companies grow. So when the companies grow, scaling learning becomes easier because you're building on something that already exists. There is always this moment in a company's life cycle when top management realizes that we need to have something more formal, more structured, more effective, let's say. And that's the point when they realize they want to establish a formal L&D function. And again, from my experience, this point of realizing the need starts when there are around 2,000 or 3,000 employees in the company. From my experience, because sometimes occasionally I'm approached by recruitment teams from other companies asking if I'm interested in establishing the L&D function there. And I always ask, like, how many people? And this is the number I see. It's about, I often hear from 2,000 to 3,000 people. That's when companies realize that they cannot handle this anymore, and they need more structure. And that's what happened at DataArt as well. We've taken these grassroots efforts and we structured them into a more cohesive learning strategy, so to say. So we listen to the needs of our colleagues. We listen to what the business needs. We listen to what our clients need. And then we shape our offerings around these priorities. And as a result, we have this comprehensive learning ecosystem that's robust and flexible, I would say. And here I would also like to add that from my point of view, there are 3 key elements at this point that are crucial for scaling learning culture once the company grows. First of all, it's leadership support. Without the buy-in of the top managers, scaling learning is virtually impossible inside the company. Also, creating the right environment. We provide the infrastructure and opportunities to colleagues. For instance, launching mentoring programs, a library, internal access to internal and external courses, coaching, professional communities, and everything. So that's the infrastructure and the environment. And the last key ingredient is, I think, stepping back, not forcing and not pushing. Instead, we offer opportunities and let people choose what works for them. And flexibility is crucial here. And as a result of all these 3 things, then what we see is we have professional communities developing inside the company by their own initiative. They develop skill matrices in collaboration with us, learning paths for their qualifications, and so on. We have internal experts who are happy to be mentors, course instructors, speakers at IT events, and so on. And it's all about creating a culture where learning is accessible and relevant, but never forced and never pushed, right? So going back to your question and to wrap up, it's in short, it's not about building something from scratch, because there is always something, even in tiny companies. It's about nurturing what's already there and giving it the structure, shape, strategy, and vision.
Marcos Mauro, Executive VP LATAM at DataArt, gave us an amazing look at Latin America's tech boom. We talked about AI, Fintech, and how the region is becoming a global leader. And yes, somehow we compared economic shifts to churros. Listen to more from that conversation.
Fintech in Mexico is like, it's the perfect storm happening, but in the good way. So, across Latin America, fintechs are booming because of the variety of reasons. Mexico in particular, indeed stands out. So a key driver for this, if you think about it, is a combination, again, of, a very, very large, previously underbanked population. So you have to understand that there's a lot of people in Latin America. They don't have any banking services. They don't use any. And you would say, well, how does that work? Well, basically they use cash. They get their money in cash. They have informal work. They get a certain amount of money and then they spend it, but it's basically cash, paper, notes. That's just the way it goes, but it's for a big chunk of Latin America. Believe it or not, that is like more than 40%. So basically all of the people, were basically excluded of the finances sector, right? So what that created is a strong opportunity, but also at the same time there's very, very high penetration of mobile devices, for example. So people probably don't have banks, but they have a mobile device, right? So that is a perfect platform to, serve really capillary, really great financial services. So that is the opportunity that startups took. And in Mexico in particular, it's a perfect representation of that. It's the biggest Spanish-speaking market. So basically, it makes a lot of sense that is booming even beyond what's happening in the rest of Latin America, because the opportunity is bigger, the investments are bigger, and again, these two things, I think, that created kind of the perfect setup so that fintechs could, emerge. But if you think about it, it goes even beyond, just banking services. But think about it, right? Let's say that there's a guy, walking across the street trying to sell you churros, for example, right? So he's walking with a basket of churros, right? And formerly, that person would say, okay, do you want some churros? And then he would get, you would pay in cash and he would give you churros. But now, for example, there are many things that can change. Like, for example, some of the financial companies and startups are providing, a payment instrument for that person to have. He can receive a digital payments, but not only that, he can also pay digitally for other goods that he uses to make the churros. And there are a myriad of financial services. It's micro financial services, if you think about it, but with great capillarity and great numbers, right? So there's like an untapped market of people that formerly didn't have banks, and now all of a sudden, they can go ahead and sell their churros, using digital payments, which seems absolutely normal in other parts of the world, but in Latin America, it probably was the cornerstone of why these things worked, because it's cumbersome to walk around with money. You have to understand that, these countries and the general public, when they are using money, they are also subject to, it's not the dollar or the euro, right? So it's it's a peso, probably some local peso, which is depreciated all the time. It's subject to inflation. Your notes no longer are probably good for nothing. You have to carry a ton of them in order to pay for stuff. So it's incredibly, incredibly cumbersome and difficult. So now all of a sudden, these people that were completely excluded from going, all tidy up to one of the bank branches and asking for credit, now they can get it in the palm of their hands, thanks to this innovation, which again, is very common in other geographies, but in Latin America is happening right now. And now everybody's, jumping onto that wave.
Julia Zavileyskaya, Chief People Officer at DataArt, joined us to discuss hiring trends and AI's role in recruitment. We talked about why AI should not be making hiring decisions and what really keeps employees engaged. Here is what she had to say.
And in regard of this shift, from what I see, actually, I really worry about that. It's shift to previous experience rather than problem-solving ability to gain new skills, knowledge, and so forth. So I really see a lot of clients that they expect from us to find and to introduce them people who have particular number of years in particular qualification or industry or working with a particular platform. And I think that it's risky trend because platform technologies, they are always changing all the time. And we really have to keep this ability to switch from one new area to another. And it's special muscle, which is really meaningful in this way of thinking, way of working. And I believe that IT is really about something new all the time. So so I really hope that we stop paying so much attention to the past experience, but keep an eye on the ability of people, how they gain new knowledge, skills, how they could be open-minded and could navigate through all these new things that appear all the time.
Oh, that's really interesting. So if let me see if I got it right. So clients right now actually come with a specific job requirement kind of in their head, and they want somebody who matches exactly everything they listed. So no flexibility.
Absolutely, yeah. So I'm really stuck when I see that somebody could be rejected because some candidate doesn't have like 3 years of experience, and instead of that has only 2.5 years of experience, and that's the reason why somebody could be rejected and not go to the interview. And I think it's kind of disaster.
And you've seen examples like this?
Absolutely, regularly. Wow. So, and as I see it like a huge risk because we have to think about future development, future how we can be flexible in all this new technology, how we switch from one technology to another. And this trend little concerns me.
Thanks for tuning in to BizTech Forward. If you enjoyed the podcast, please subscribe and share to help us reach more listeners. Thank you for being part of the conversation. See you next time.